What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest. As the Lions today look like they have begun their roster cuts for this season. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And the Lions, yes, look like they just kicked off their roster cuts as we work our way down to the 53-man roster. And that's what we have to talk about today. We're going to talk about the player that the Lions released in a second. But I also want to talk about the deadlines for cutting down your roster. It's not just one date where it's like, hey, this is the day you have to be down to 53. Whenever you get there, it doesn't really matter. There are certain deadlines that you have to reach a certain amount of players. So Lions have a few of those coming up, which means that we're probably going to see some more cuts on the way. And this one looks like the first one. I mean, I don't think the Lions are going to go make a move and go replace this player today. It just wouldn't seem to make a ton of sense. So it looks like the Lions have started this process. But we'll get into who that player was in a second. But I first want to talk about when these deadlines are. So the Lions, of course, were at a 90-man roster before the release that they made today, which puts them at 89 players currently on the roster. By August 17th, which is 2 days from now, all right, it's 4 days after, well, would it be 4 days after our first preseason game? I think it would be. Yeah, 4 days after your first preseason game, you have to have your roster cut down to 85 players. It's only 5 players, but it has to cut down 5 players by August 17th, and I believe that's 4 p.m. Eastern time. So that means that there's about 4 more cuts that are on the way for the Detroit Lions, unless something happens and guys get put to different designations. But regardless, there's probably 4 more cuts on the way pretty darn soon, and this looks like the first one. Then next week, August 24th, you have to have your roster cut down to 80 players, so then you're down 10. And then you go to August 31st, and this is when that huge jump has to happen, and you have to have your roster cut down to 53 players. Look like they have begun that with the release that they made today. I just wanted to clear that up because it's something that I didn't really know either what the days were. So I wanted to share that with you guys, and then as we go on and as we talk about roster cuts the Lions make, we can kind of have that in the back of our mind and when the deadlines are and when to look for cuts, because there's a couple on the way, that's for sure. But let's talk about who the Lions released today. The Lions have released cornerback Alex Brown, the 24-year-old out of South Carolina State, who the Lions brought in this offseason. Okay, Alex Brown has been released. And really, after diving into this, my idea of this releasing is that it wasn't because he necessarily played bad in the first preseason game or anything like that. I think a lot of it just had to do with the fact that we have a lot of young cornerbacks, a lot of guys that we want to see a little bit more. You know, you want to see one more game. You want to see a couple more practices with some of these guys. I feel like that's where the Lions are at with the cornerback position right now. Alex Brown is definitely an interesting cornerback. He came out of the draft 5'10", 185 pounds. He basically had the build of a nickel cornerback, and he still kind of does, but he plays on the outside. He doesn't really play on the inside. So he was definitely lacking some size. And personally, I believe the Lions like size at the cornerback position. I mean, when you look at the players that we brought in, whether it's Iffy, Dunbar, Jerry Jacobs, I mean, I think they like size at that cornerback position. And Alex Brown really didn't have a ton of that. Even when you watch him against the Buffalo Bills, pretty much every snap that he took was at the outside cornerback position. They really didn't slide him inside that often. Also, keep in mind, he did miss a little bit of time through training camp. Wasn't anything serious, but he did miss a little bit of time. But of course, he was back and healthy enough to play in this preseason game. But as I mentioned, I don't think this was necessarily a thing where it's like, hey, he got killed against the Buffalo Bills, he's got to get released. He just didn't really stand out. I think that was the issue. He didn't stand out. When you have a lot of young corners like the Lions do, you kind of want to see these guys. And that's not to say Alex Brown is old, but my point is he just didn't really stand out in that Buffalo Bills game. I mean, he wasn't really targeted that often, and I would give some of the credit to him, but also some of the credit to the Detroit Lions defense playing much better down the stretch. And of course, he was a part of that, but the Lions' run defense was much better. They were getting after the quarterback, Julian Okwara, Bruce Hector, Robert McCray. They were getting after it. Towards the end of the game, we had a couple of quick drives offensively, a couple of 3-and-outs. So it was really tough for Alex Brown to get targeted down the field. So it wasn't like he was getting killed. Now, the one that you may remember came on the final drive. Well, final drive for the Buffalo Bills, where they end up getting the field goal. I know all of us remember the 4th and 10 where Bobby Price was beat deep, but before that pass, they took a shot on Alex Brown's side of the field. Now, this pass fell incomplete. You could argue this pass was a little bit overthrown. It was definitely a little overthrown. It fell incomplete. With a better pass here, he probably could have hit this bomb early in the possession to Alex Brown, and that's not what you want to give up like Bobby Price did. That's not what you want to give up. He did get a little bit involved. He got his hands on the receiver at the end of the play. You can see the safety may have been a little bit late to slide over. The pass did fall incomplete, but yeah, you could definitely make the case that he was at least beat by a step on this play, which isn't great. But again, he just really wasn't targeted that much outside of this. Now, he did have one tackle, but it showed up on special teams, and it was about at the 29-yard line. He kind of dove at the legs of the returner. I don't even know if they counted it as a tackle because he might have been out of bounds. But either way, he had one tackle, and he also had a missed tackle a little bit earlier on special teams, so he didn't really stand out there either. And some of our guys on special teams did stand out, whether that's at the safety position with a guy like Bobby Price, who was also playing cornerback too, so he's competition now as well. And Bobby Price, even though he gave up the bomb, he also had a couple of good plays defensively. Like, he had a couple of pass breakups. They used him all over the field, inside, outside. Of course, he can play the safety position. So there's a lot of versatility there. Alex Brown just didn't seem to have a ton of versatility. They didn't move him around a ton. They kind of just played him at outside cornerback. It's tough to really judge from the side angle how well he was playing in coverage, and some of those plays were very quick. But, I mean, like I said, everybody gave up plays. Like, if he gave up a completion, but then he had the forced incomplete pass on the sideline, right? Jerry Jacobs gave up a couple completions. He was trying to play in the inside, even though he looked much better at the outside spot. But he also had some flashes of getting in good spots. We know the special teams big hit that he laid, even though it was a flag. This is a cornerback that's a super explosive, super athletic. The guy ran a 4.42 coming out of college. He had a 41.5 inch vertical. There's still lack of consistency here. And I guess technically this does open a spot where the Lions want to sign somebody. But, I mean, when you look at our cornerback position now, we're pretty deep. You have Amani Okuda. Of course, they're going to make it. I think Michael Ford's a lock as well. His ability to play inside, outside. We saw it in the last game against Buffalo. And Iffy, there's no way they're moving a third round pick. He's a lock too. So I think those four are locks. But when you look at, let's say, the Rams last season, Rams only kept 4 cornerbacks on their roster last year, which Aubrey Pleasant was a part of. Now, they had their safeties. They had 5 safeties. And same thing kind of with the Saints. The Saints kept 5 cornerbacks last season. So they went kind of light at cornerback. They've also went a little bit heavier at safety, Iffy, because they can believe that he could play a little bit of both. And then having versatility to be able to play slot and outside is also a very big part of it. You have Nickel Roby Coleman. You have A.J. Parker, who was out there at the first unit, but also in the fourth quarter as well. So it's kind of weird how they did that. But regardless, he showed he could play inside, outside. We saw that back at Kansas State. Jerry Jacobs played a little inside, outside. He had some flashes, gave up some completions. He didn't look as comfortable in the inside, but he's done that in the past. So he has experience doing that. I mean, that's not something that's like completely foreign to him. He's done it in the past, and he just kind of has that playmaker vibe. Like this play right here, it just kind of gives me like some Darius Slay vibes. You can see how he kind of like just reads the quarterback's pass and he drops back in the coverage. So he doesn't make a play on the football, but it's kind of just that feel. I actually think Elder's the guy that definitely could be out because Michael Ford can play inside. If they like A.J. Parker and they want to keep him around, then you have Nickel Roby Coleman. I actually think that Corn Elder is the guy that could be the next out from the cornerback position. And I know it sounds crazy. We'll see what the Lions do, but I think there's a very legitimate shot. Not like Coleman went out and balled out against the Buffalo Bills, like he had that pass interference, which I thought was a little soft, but he's still kind of getting acclimated to the Lions defense. He's still kind of new around here. And then it's also about Corn Elder's health. We know he has the hamstring injury, but how serious is it? How soon can he get back? Is it serious enough where we don't see him next week? Does he come back to practice next week? That's going to be an interesting part as well, because remember in the beginning, the Lions did choose Elder over Coleman because Coleman was available when they signed Corn Elder. Through training camp, at least from what I've seen, and I think what the Lions have seen as well, when Elder was there, Michael Ford became the starting nickel cornerback for the Lions, so he took that job. So it's very interesting to see how that battle plays out and how fast Corn Elder can get back and healthy. It's possible that Jerry Jacobs and or A.J. Parker is looking at practice squad time as well. I mean, of course, they're at risk then if they're not protected, but, you know, those two guys have potential landing there to clear some roster spots as well. That's a guy like Bobby Price. You know, so there's always a practice squad option as well with some of these guys. Not sure how many the Lions are going to keep. Bobby Price has also played some cornerback as well, and even though he had some good and also some bad, like the big completion he gave up, and sometimes he wasn't able to really stick with guys out of breaks, but he also flashed too. He made some big hits. He played inside, outside. He had some good coverage reps. He had the pass breakup. And he also made plays on special teams. He stuck out there as well. A super surprising cut, but I am wishing Alex Brown the best of luck. I'm glad he's back and healthy, and I think he's got a very legitimate shot to land with someone because he's not a bad corner. I mean, he spent a couple years with Kansas City. He actually got a Super Bowl ring with Kansas City. Last year, he missed the season because he had a torn ACL. So it's good to see him back. healthy, and being able to stick around with the team is not easy to do like he did with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that's a big deal that they kept him around. I think he's got a very legitimate shot. He's still a young player. He's still an athlete, an explosive athlete that didn't look bad in the Buffalo Bills game. As I said, he just didn't stand out. So we'll keep an eye on the Detroit Lions and see what moves they're also going to make. I don't expect them to replace this with anything. I think they just want to see a lot of these young dudes going forward, maybe at least one more preseason week with these 5 cut-down spots they're going to have to make. I don't think the Lions will go much further than that. I think they'll keep it probably at about 5. That way they can see a lot more players for week 2. But I don't know. We'll see how the Lions feel. We'll get a feel for that pretty soon once they start releasing players. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching. Good luck, Alex, and I'm out.